Hello, and welcome to the Sacred Heart Shaman podcast, where we talk about spiritual healing, shamanic wisdom, and the challenges of walking the healer's path. My name is Nadia Harenkiu, and today's episode number 44, Understanding Integration. Hello, and thank you for joining me on the podcast today. We are going to be talking about integration, and now is a really great time to mention that my podcast is like a story that never ends. Each episode is isolated to some extent, but really to see the big picture of medicine work, of shamanic work, it can be really helpful to listen to some of the episodes around it because it is like a storyline, particularly with this episode. So there's that. There's some things that I share about on this podcast that some listeners may not fully understand, and that's really going to come to light in this episode. And everything that I share is about what's happening for me in real time, with a sprinkling of stories and wisdom, some episodes more than others. And many of my podcasts, as a result of this, are extremely personal and include deep information about whatever transformational process I'm moving through at the time that I record. And this is what it means to live as a medicine woman. This is the shamanic way of life. And it requires a lot from me, particularly with regard to vulnerability and honesty. But it requires something of you as well. Participating in this podcast requires you to understand that through this process, your biggest takeaway can and should be that healing is not linear, that it is not a one size fits all. It is not something that can fit into a box, and it's never something that you can make assumptions or even judgments about. This isn't about the right and wrong way of doing things or experiencing things. It's about my experience in an effort that I'm sharing in an effort to help other people who are on the path. Because to be real, nothing spiritual will ever make sense or be put into boxes the way that we want it to be. And I hope that that comes through in everything that I share, but especially today. So this is coming up for me because I'm in the process of integrating something very large. And so today we're going to have a conversation about integration and what it means and how it looks. So if you've been following the podcast, you know that I went through a very big divorce process last year and had to surrender my entire life, my business, my money, my children, my marriage, my identity, my house, and even my dogs died as well. Now, there wasn't really anything wrong or bad with my life, but it was time for a death process. And that's a very real part of not only the spiritual path, but of life path itself. And so I've spent many months integrating that death. Now, it involved an existential crisis, resolution of childhood trauma, and a number of other things, some of which are still lingering in the legal system with my ex-husband. As you may or may not know, or have noticed, some of the episodes have disappeared for this reason. Now, my second major event that's happened in the last year was around a trip to Italy, where I just went April 2025, and I encountered the energy of medical saints and understood that this was part of who I am and who I was. So, what I'm describing here is a complete death or descent, aka the events of my last year, and then a complete peak, aka meeting the energy of God in a church in Rome that literally brought me to my knees and cried on and off about for weeks because I got to touch the pure sacredness of that experience. Now, both of these experiences are way off the charts for quote unquote normal life as a human. They're often experiences that you hear about from people who take psychedelics, but they're actually readily available to anyone living a life where you're connected to the unseen, where you have spiritual connection. And when we have these experiences, they blow us so far open that it takes time for things to settle back to baseline, and sometimes the pendulum can wildly swing several times before we come back to baseline. Now, I'm going to sidestep here for a second and talk about integration, like as a profession, as a thing. Now, in my many years of working with people who took plant medicine as spiritual sacrament, I encountered a great many individuals who called themselves integration coaches. And in reality, I think I've only met one that I would refer people to, but even still, I would refer based on her stability at that time. Because the truth is that you can't train to be an integration coach. You must experience integration through going through it yourself many times over. In order for it to be your medicine, it's also going to be the thing that takes you out over and over again. And that's kind of a secret code in the spiritual path. Is actually my favorite integration person says this: your mess is your medicine. So whatever your big messiness of your life is, it's often the medicine that you're supposed to bring to other people. Now, to be an integration coach, you have to go through this integration process a lot. You have to have a lived experience, which means you must be working on some kind of medicine path, some kind of spiritual path. Do not confuse the word medicine with plant medicine. They are not the same, even though they occasionally intersect. That being said, many integration specialists actually constantly have their life being ripped apart and put back together again. Some of them do it well and some of them don't. But at no point have I met someone who's been through a training and thought, oh, yeah, they're qualified, because you can't train for this kind of skill set. Integration is a legit skill set, and working with a medicine person or a healer with integration is really, really beneficial when you can find it. And this is the reality of getting support through integration. For me, integration is so much more than hiring a coach who supports you pre and post psychedelic journey. And unfortunately, this is what I hear most of when it comes to integration support and what's available. People want to sell you big packages, they want it to be coincide with psychedelics, but integration is actually an ongoing process that happens a lot throughout our lives, such as the experiences that I've shared with you guys on the podcast. Now, I have worked with fantastic integration coaches, and yet you can't really have just an integration coach. It doesn't work that way. Integration is about having multiple kinds of coaches, maybe a therapist, a couple body workers, a new daily routine that supports the latest version of you, and a solid friend group. Plus, all of the basics that we all need and should have, woven throughout our life to some degree, like journaling, meditation, some kind of like physical body work, yoga, strength training, running, energy healing that you perform on yourself, and solid time in nature. Hmm. And even with all of this, integration is messy as fuck. It is so messy. And it usually takes months to years to fully integrate one of these peak or valley experiences, sometimes a lifetime, if we're being honest. There are some experiences I've had that take 5 or 6 years to integrate, and some that I know are going to take me my entire life to actually understand fully. So, with this in mind, I'm going to talk a bit about my integration experience with regard to the two events that I have described previously and at the beginning of the podcast. So, after my trip to Italy, I felt really strongly about working in a saint role. That's what we'll call it. Offering my services to those who otherwise couldn't afford them or couldn't have them. And I proceeded to do that. And I had this extremely strong feeling and conviction of like, well, everybody deserves this and it should be accessible to everyone. And why are people charging so much money? And those thoughts and feelings and rage, totally real. And yet they're only one piece of the puzzle. The unpacking of the information that was revealed is actually that the role of saint is the role I've been operating from for the last 10 years, not the one that I'm walking into. And for many years, I've been doing so much of my work at free or very low rates, doing donation-based community work, free work from with people all over the world, doing remote work, ceremonies and retreats that were, to be honest, was not charging enough for, and things of that nature. Now, through this process, I came to realize that I was actually not reaching certain demographics because my energy was going towards serving these people who were coming to me because I was accessible, because they could find me, they could afford me, and I was able to meet them where they are. Now, this was a wonderful experience for me, and I got to help so many people who would have never otherwise received it. And then over the last, I'd say like year, that door started closing for me, and I continued to try to keep it open. Um, and then people stopped finding me. My incoming clients were not a vibrational match. And I'm continually encountering people who literally cannot digest the healing that's asking to come through for them because it's coming in at level 50 and they're operating at a level 3. Now, this isn't all of them, of course, but it's a fair amount. And it's kind of trying to tell me something about my work and how it's changed. And, when people take 4 or 5 years, 6 years to circle back to me about this one thing that I said to them or this one practice we did together, I feel like there's an assessment that's warranted. I love planting seeds and changing lives, and at the same time, I can feel myself being underutilized. And recognizing that means recognizing my worth on a different level. And so when you can see the things that other people can't see, the threads, the shadows, the patterns, when you can heal things with your hands, with your energy, like these are significant offerings, right? And they're things that can change the world when used in the right setting, in the right context, not on a individual one-on-one basis. And so as I digest this information, like more layers continue to come up for me around it. So, upon returning from Italy, I went full sliding scale with my work. I immediately opened up to a slew of new clients, and I got to focus on experiencing high levels of pleasure and joy in my sessions when I put aside the money piece. I expected nothing from my clients, I gave them all that I had, and I disconnected money from my work, from my value for the first time in my career. And if I showed up for sessions knowing that my value was high and my work was priceless, could I untangle money from it and just enjoy the work? And it was a resounding yes. And that was a absolutely crazy, beautiful experience for me. And yet there was also, but there's more, right? And then the portal closed again with a new client influx, and I'm asked to wait because there's something else coming. And as I really sit with this saint energy, this energy of like medical saints and the existence of saints before Catholicism is so fascinating because it is a part of me and it's definitely been a part of my work and a part of some past lives. And it has a very sacred space in earth, in the grid, in my body. And I really have to acknowledge it and honor it and not put it to rest completely, but integrate it into today, into right now, and what's being asked in front of me. Now, this is the thing with integration process is the universe will be super clear when you're done integrating. So, integration is a lot about patience. You have to ride the waves of what's coming in and coming through, not taking anything too seriously until it roots so deep that it stays with you for weeks and feels like it's part of your DNA. The universe will always reflect what you're ready for, and it's important not to make any leaps prematurely while the integration process is still unfolding. Now, it's funny in plant medicine work, I would always say, like, don't go home and get divorced or leave your job, let everything settle first. And as you can see, sometimes I suck at taking my own advice. And it's hilarious that I didn't even realize I was mid pendulum swing in my integration process. What did I have to integrate after all? I just found myself in Rome. In fact, I had a soul retrieval in Rome, and I wish someone could have pointed that out for me because I didn't know I was in the middle of integration. It's a great lesson to all of you listeners that even though I have some killer wisdom and abilities, I am in fact considered a master in my fields. I still have endless ways in which I'm growing, improving, and getting to know myself and this process. Again, healing is not linear and there are no rules, and it's like being in school 24/7. Once you think you know what's happening, it gets spun on its side and you are given a fresh lesson with new depths to explore. So this leads me to my next point. Sometimes we don't even know that we're in an integration space. So let's talk about that a little bit. Integration is the space that we enter when we find a part of ourselves that was lost. So when we meet God, who is also us, when we die, metaphorically, when we excavate a trauma from our body, when anything happens in our world that changes who we are at a core level. This can be a big grief, birth, a new trauma, a transcendental experience. Any of those things need to be integrated, and they will take varying lengths of time to do so. Now, as far as what integration feels like, I'm going to tell you what my experience is, and maybe it will land for you. Integration feels fuzzy. It's like there's something in my energy field that is heavy, but unclear, like a big pasta meal that I have not yet digested, but on the spiritual plane. And I'll notice that I can't listen to music, I can't listen to an audiobook, I cannot read, but I crave meditation music or light classical music. It's like the feeling of I can't take in anything else. And I just need to be still and I just need to be quiet. Like I'm overstimulated, I'm full. I'm full to the brim. Please don't put anything else in. And that sense of full also is accompanied by a sense of unclear or lack of clarity. And it means that I'm in between here and there, and nothing feels solid about the future. I can't take anything else in. I'm not yet ready to put anything else out. And it's like a sacred pause and churning, or digesting, if you will. Now, these things happen, the integration process happens right after we have one of those big moments that I just listed, but sometimes those moments happen over time and it's not a single identifiable experience, which is why integration can be hard to identify. After these things take place, we need to recalibrate back to baseline, and that takes both time and support. Without the time and space to integrate, we end up chasing either those highs or those lows, never bringing them back to our baseline to expand our natural and somewhat neutral peaks and valleys. If you need support during integration, if any of this is resonating with you, or you're like, oh, I know exactly what that feels like, or maybe you're in it right now, please make sure you reach out for support. Whatever that means to you and however it looks, I am available. I have integration resources. But I feel like the best advice I can give you is to get your people, gather them, ask for help, do the things you know you're supposed to be doing, and just be patient with the process. And if not, if none of it lands, hopefully I can just give you a new perspective on the process of integration that you can walk away with, keep it in your back pocket for when it is useful to you. Thank you for joining me on the podcast today. I look forward to chatting with you again soon. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to know more about me and my work, you can find me at www.sacredheartshaman.com.